Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 5, Episode 24, Empok Nor. This episode aired May 19th, 1997. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode, Blaze of Glory?
No, but it was not a glorious way to go.
No, and we say goodbye to Snodgrass.
Yep, without even a song.
I mean, he could come back in flashbacks, time travel, the Mirrorverse.
Oh yeah, the Mirror Snodgrass.
But he's out of this timeline.
Yep, I'm afraid so. Well,
yeah,
potentially out of this timeline.
Oh, Lord. Well, a lot has happened since we last recorded.
Yes, it has.
We were at a wedding.
Yep.
It was very exciting out in the world. But now we're home.
And recording again.
And recording a podcast about Star Trek. Everything's come back to normal.
Most importantly, everything centers around Star Trek.
Right. So should we get started?
Yes, we should. And I will be doing the notes this week.
Hooray.
So everybody will have to put up with me talking.
I like the role where I'm what are those two Muppets who just sit and make comments from the balcony?
A Statler and Waldorf?
Yes, I will be the Statler and Waldorf of this episode.
Okay. That sounds good, I think. Possibly.
Okay.
Well, let's get started.
Go.
We start with Quark's bar, and Morn seems to have recovered from his freak-out from last week.
Oh, yeah.
But it's pretty much deserted, because Miles and Nog are repairing conduits and making a deafening noise and driving everyone away.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're jackhammering.
Yeah, shouldn't Ferengi have to wear ear protection? This seems like an OSHA problem.
And we see Working Man Miles in the conduit with Nog, and we know it's
Yep.
Working Man Miles because he's got his sleeves partially rolled up.
Yep.
And Nog is paying very close attention to the repair and tells him that his father says he can learn a lot from Miles because he can fix anything. Miles finishes his work and says, as good as new, and they both admire his handiwork until something else breaks and steam vents into the conduit and onto them. You'd think this could be potentially dangerous or fatal.
Yes, again, another OSHA issue.
Is that high-pressure steam that could literally cook them? At what point in the intervening centuries did protective gear become banned?
Yeah, no eye protection, no ear protection, no hard hat, nothing.
I guess engineers at that point in the future, they survive by the tough ones make it and
Yep.
all the others die.
Yikes.
Do you think they have one of those signs of number of days since a serious accident?
Number of days since a red shirt died.
Yeah, exactly. We once got it up to 3.
It's going to be back to 0.
Yeah. In Sisko's office, Miles and Odo are meeting, and Miles tells Sisko that the whole manifold is shot and they need to replace it, but they can't replicate one because the Cardassians use a beta matrix compositor. This is addressed in Overanalysis.
The hand waviness of things you can replicate and things you can't.
Exactly.
Okay.
I may have some headcanon on that later.
Excellent.
The consensus is that Gul Dukat will probably be unwilling to supply the new one, and Miles suggests a salvage mission to an abandoned station called Empok Nor. It was built on the same design as DS9, so they can get the parts that they need from there.
Convenient.
You know, they didn't actually try asking Dukat. They could have asked first.
I'm glad they didn't, because then we would have had to see him. Maybe they could have done it off screen. I wonder what slave labor they used to build this other one.
Probably Bajorans.
Oh, just more Bajorans.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Well, they're good for manual labor.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Garak.
Odo warns them that the station is likely to be booby-trapped against non-Cardassians. So Sisko suggests, how about taking a Cardassian along with you? And we cut to Garak following Miles onto a runabout. Miles asks if the captain threatened him into going along, and Garak replies, nothing so coarse. He bribed me. Apparently Garak wants to expand his tailor shop, and Sisko promised to help. Miles also tells Garak that he's glad he's there. And Garak replies with, everyone lately seems to trust me. It's quite unnerving.
I like that. I imagine, though, that's because Worf has gained a new respect for him after what happened in the two-parter.
Well, and I think part of it is maybe people are misinterpreting, trusting Garak with, Garak will do whatever is necessary for him to survive.
Right.
But I still think if it came down to your Garak, Garak's saving himself and you're going to be eaten by whatever it is that was chasing them.
Oh, yeah. The only way to trust Garak is to be the thing that he's most interested in or to have the same goals of survival.
Yeah, a Julian will always survive.
Something in his best interest. Oh, yes, or Julian. Good point.
Now we're introduced to the other crew members who will take part in this mission. There are 4 other Starfleet personnel, 2 of whom are engineers and 2 of whom are security officers.
Clearly all doomed. New people. We'll never see them again.
I was going to ask at what point you thought, well, are any of these going to be red shirts?
I figured when I first watched this that at least 2 of them were dead.
Yeah.
I didn't think all 4 of them. But, yes.
Of the 2 security officers, one of them, Stolzov, she seems quite cocky, so I'm pretty certain that was going to be our first red shirt candidate.
Yes.
And then the other one. Did you notice the other one appears to be a clone of Eddington?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The guy with the bad attitude.
Yes. Do you think anybody noticed that Starfleet was actually cloning Eddington's?
Clearly nobody noticed.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, he was definitely Snotty's brother.
Okay, we're going straight into headcanon here. I think Section 31 is cloning Eddington's, or had a plan to clone them, and produce these, like, disposable security officers. And it didn't work out because they had, like, a bad attitude or this hero complex, or, you know, they were just obsessed with musical theater, and they had to basically get rid of them and stuck them all over places where nobody thought they'd find them.
Well, they probably each had a version of his personality. So,
Exactly.
Right? This guy is like chip on his shoulder is the thing that he got from Snodgrass. Yeah, and then maybe somebody else would have just the obsession with Les Mis.
Right, and in this case, for some reason, they accidentally ended up with 2 Eddingtons on the station. And leading the tail end of the party is Cadet Nog. Miles has allowed him to come along on the mission because he's earned it, as Miles says, and he's also carrying a phaser rifle, which is about as big as Nog.
Oh, yeah, it's more than half his size, for sure.
Yeah, it was a little bit out of proportion to him.
You know, when that Snodgrass clone said something like, "Can I help you, cadet?" in a really snotty voice?
Yes.
I wondered for a minute if any of these people were from the swing shift way back in that episode, The Assignment.
Right.
Where we had talked for a long time about what's with these guys? Is this the F Troop? So I went back to check, but no, they were all different actors.
Oh, that's a good point. They could have been.
I looked.
And it's pretty obvious none of these people actually read the mission briefing.
No, they weren't quite prepared. The woman who plays Stoltzov, I looked her up. Her name is Margene Holden, and she was actually in the movie The Lost World, Jurassic Park. That's the sequel to the original Jurassic Park. And she was credited as Screamer.
Oh, that's funny.
I can imagine there were a lot of screamers in that movie.
Yes.
Hilarious.
Then comes the running and the screaming.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we go into the opening credits. On the runabout, Garak and Nog are playing a Cardassian strategy game called Kotra. This appears to be annoying Garak because Nog plays the game very defensively, when, to quote Garak, it's supposed to be about bold strategy and decisive action. And
then we get more general racism here from Garak.
Yeah, yes, about how you can't play it with Ferengi, and it's like asking Klingons to close their mouth when they eat. The Cardassians do seem to have a lot of casual racism.
Indeed.
Garak asks Miles if he'd like to play the winner, as he'd love to take on the hero of Setlik 3. This turns out to be something of a dig at Miles over his war record where he led a small team of Federation troops that took out an entire regiment of Cardassians. Miles tells him that he's no longer a soldier and he's just an engineer, and his reenacting of ancient battles with Bashir on the holodecks is just a game. Garak tells him, well, so is Kotra, and I'd love to play it against a man like you. Garak says that very seriously. It's like he needs to prove something against Miles. That sort of Cardassian superiority thing. It's clearly something that bothers Garak, that irritates him. And I think it's that Cardassian bigotry coming out of how could a human beat a whole regiment of Cardassians?
Yeah, like he must be a genius. He can't just be an engineer.
Right.
Who was temporarily a soldier.
Right. There's more to him that maybe this is his cover. Looking at Miles, if you like, almost the same way as Garak himself is, I'm just a tailor. No, you're a lot more than a tailor. So he's putting that onto Miles.
I hadn't thought about that, because I did have a note that I was going to ask you, why do you think he was poking at him? But that's a really great way to look at it, and that's probably true.
Right. And before we leave the scene, I think for a spy, Garak can be incredibly transparent with his emotions.
Well, I think he usually is showing the emotions that he wants to show.
I would agree with you most of the time, but this seems to be something that really irritates him.
Well, obviously, they put it here because they're setting it up for something else later.
Yeah.
But maybe a little bit awkward, though we have those moments with Garak where we do see the emotional side of it, but then he turns it right off immediately and goes back to normal as if nothing's happened.
Oh, so maybe this was a slip by Garak.
Maybe.
Ah, because Nog was annoying him, it slipped out. I like your idea there. The runabout now arrives at the station, Empok Nor, which is just like Deep Space Nine, but it's tilted at a 45-degree angle.
Every time they showed it from the outside tilted, I'm like, okay, it's not Deep Space Nine. I get it.
I guess it would be confusing because the two stations would look identical.
Yeah, well, they could have just changed one little piece of it.
That costs budget.
Yeah, I guess this didn't cost anything. In general, I did think it was kind of genius the way they shot this whole thing using the same sets, but, it's supposed to be a different location. And also, we just turned the lights off and it's a whole different place.
Yes. Well, I'm glad they brought Garak along because he tells them that they can't transport because they'll have scramblers and they can't dock because the airlock will be booby-trapped. Nog volunteers to disable the traps, but Garak delivers a great line here where he says, "The scanners in the airlock might mistake your enthusiasm as Cardassian, but not your DNA."
That was cute.
We then go to Garak on the station in a spacesuit, enabling the power and turning the artificial gravity back on. Lights all over the station light up. And then we see inside the station somewhere 2 lighted caskets. And ominous music plays as the camera zooms onto one of them, in which we see a Cardassian who suddenly opens his eyes and the music swells. And now we know that there's going to be trouble, and at least one of the crew is going to be redshirted.
I didn't think they were caskets. I mean, they looked like stasis chambers. Totally sci-fi stasis chambers.
Oh, I looked at it like they looked like caskets.
Okay. They don't usually have see-through glass in them.
True. The other thing I thought of in this scene was, if they were booby traps, could they have been set off by a Starfleet spacesuit? Or are they just so basic they just look for the DNA of the person?
Apparently, they just look for the DNA.
Yeah. That was kind of risky for Garak, but I guess he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
The crew has now made it onto the station, and the whole place looks dimly lit. It very much reminds me of Empok Nor when they do the flashbacks.
Definitely.
Miles tells the team that they need to split up and carry out their assorted tasks, and most importantly, to reinforce the traditional horror genre as the best approach to getting everyone killed.
Yeah, he breaks them up into the groups to get the must-haves on their list, the could-use, and the would-be-nice.
Yeah.
That is not the best way to complete a dangerous mission. You should all be working on the must-haves, and you work your way down the list.
Right.
So that if something happens, then you cut the mission short. All you've done is drop off the least valuable things. I mean, that was really dumb. The first fatal mistake that they make when getting onto the station.
Exactly. In complete agreement.
Also, why didn't we do like a little pre-briefing or something from Garak about what the potential booby traps could be? We talked about booby traps, but we actually never really saw any.
Like I said, nobody read the mission briefing.
Yeah. And did we not scan for life forms? Because we would have found 2.
We know that the Cardassians build conduits and things to very high standards, so you can't easily scan through them. So maybe that's a allowable hand wave there.
A lot of waving going on.
Garak has been teamed up with the blue guy, whose name is Bacot, and they're going up some stairs when Garak sticks his hand on some goop that's stuck to the rail. Somebody left some gum behind?
It did look like blue gum.
Bacot uses a tricorder on this blue goop and says it's some kind of biogenic compound. And they take no further action about it. Like, could this be toxic? Could be a poison for Garak? Nothing. They're just like, they just carry on.
The next fatal mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, as you're watching it, you know as soon as he touches the blue goo that he's infected with something. Again, sort of a horror movie trope.
Oh, precisely.
Yeah. There's not enough safety protocols on this entire mission.
Nobody even wears gloves.
Should have kept the spacesuits on.
Right. Garak and Bacot find the room with the caskets, which are actually stasis tubes. There are 3 of them, but the third one had a roof beam fall on it, killing the occupant, who they find is a dead Cardassian with a regimental badge that Garak identifies as 3rd Battalion, 1st Order. Garak ominously points out both the other tubes have recently been activated.
Now, at this point, you know there are 2 Cardassians on the station.
Yes.
We should have closed ranks, stopped splitting up, done the important things, and got the heck out of there. But we don't do that.
That's because you're not a Deep Space Nine planner. Miles and Nog are working on something technical and discover that he's left a tool back on the runabout. While Nog goes to fetch it, Garak calls Miles and asks him to come down to the infirmary, which is apparently where the stasis tubes were located. When Nog gets back to the runabout, he finds it undocked and floating off into space. But he doesn't have to worry about it for too long, as it suddenly explodes.
When we were watching this, that moment, I was like, oh, did not see that coming.
That was oh crap.
Yeah.
After the ad break, Garak thinks the former occupants of the status tubes released the runabout, and the engineer, Peretti, quotes the motto of the 3rd Battalion, "Death to all."
Great.
And for the second time in the episode, the 2 security officers seem very cocky. Stoltzov says, "We should introduce ourselves to them." And the Eddington clone says, "We should find them and say hello."
Yeah, I don't like the cockiness. That's just going to get you killed.
Agreed.
But what do you think is the right move here? Because Miles is like, no, we can't go after them. We have to focus on getting this task done so that we can get out of here. And their task at this point now is to find a way to send out an SOS signal. What do you think they should have done here?
I think the theme of this episode is that Miles is trying to forget and reject his background as a soldier. He's behaving like an engineer. If he's looking at this as an engineering task, not as a military task.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Because he continues to split them up and he's not thinking clearly.
Yes.
He says something like, all I care about is getting everybody home. And it's like, well, if that's really all you cared about, you should have been thinking a little bit more about survival.
Oh, I agree. Mars is focusing here on the wrong things. He's focusing on the engineering task. And he should be focused that this is now turned into a military operation.
Yes.
To make matters worse, they discover their tricorders now don't work because there's a dampening field in effect.
An unworking tricorder is a funny little piece of plastic with some stickers on it. It really looks like a toy.
So they can't call to help because they don't have a backup transmitter to talk to DS9.
Yep.
Yet another thing they just don't seem to plan ahead for.
They don't have lights. Nothing works except somehow their comm badges.
That's true. And Miles comes up with a plan to use the station's deflector grid as a method of actually communicating an SOS to Deep Space Nine. Unfortunately, the plan also involves separating into 3 separate teams because it's always a good idea to split up when there are 2 Cardassian soldiers somewhere on the station.
Is it?
I think so.
No. Fatal mistakes.
It's a typical Deep Space Nine plan. They have no backup, and they choose to split up when fanatical Cardassian soldiers are on the loose.
You know what they should have done?
What's that?
Straight power play.
Oh, if only Cisco had been there.
That's for our one Instagram listener who likes to bring that up.
Straight power play.
Straight power play.
So this is where we also get the first hint of something is wrong with Garak, because he's scratching his hand constantly where he touched that turquoise goop.
Starting to sweat.
Yes.
Looking a little edgy.
He's now questioning why anyone would seal themselves into status tubes for perhaps years to guard an abandoned station. He says even the 3rd Battalion isn't that fanatical.
Good question.
And he suggests something else is going on. So Miles is working away, and Garak is doing what Cardassians seem really good at, which is talking constantly. Nog is investigating around where they're working, and we see one of the Cardassians coming up behind Nog with a phaser. But he doesn't shoot. He just slinks back into the shadows.
You know, we've established a couple of times that Nog's hearing is better than a computer. So how could anyone sneak up on a Ferengi, if that's really true?
Maybe this Cardassian had, soft-soled shoes on. They can hear a conversation across a crowded, noisy bar.
Yeah, I would think there'd be no way anyone could sneak up on them.
Yeah.
Just sitting up here in the balcony with my Muppets. Throwing shade.
Elsewhere on the station, which looks like it's the promenade, Preschetti is working while Stolzov, the security officer, is guarding him. And here we see probably the worst weapons discipline ever seen, as she's actually pointing the phaser at him.
Yes, what the heck?
Yep.
Well, she says, oh, the safety's on. Come on.
So they're sending the reject security officers and the Eddington clones.
Oh my gosh. We were doomed from the beginning.
While they're working, the door on the turbo lift on the upper level suddenly closes and it descends. And then we see the classic TV trope of them standing on either side of an elevator and then jump out when the doors open to see who can get shot first. But there's no one inside and the turbo lift is empty. They make some excuses about, oh, maybe he accidentally triggered it. Or, here's an idea, maybe it's one of the Cardassian soldiers who's walking around the station.
We forgot about booby traps. Remember the booby traps. Come on, people.
Stolzov then says she's going up to the second level rather than sticking together because, again, it's easier to get killed when you split up. And in response, Pachetti waves his torch around in the most obvious please kill me way.
Yeah. Yes. Kill me, here I am. Oh my god.
Well, he sees a Cardassian emblem on the wall, and as he walks towards it, he's pulled through what looks like a window?
Yeah.
That seemed kind of odd.
Yes.
On the upper level, Stolzov then calls to O'Brien, but the second Cardassian jumps her and throws her off the promenade, and there's a very solid crunch as she lands.
Oh, farewell, terrible security person.
Miles, Nog, and Garak rush to find a very dead Stolzov and an equally dead Pachetti.
Yep. 2 down.
2 red shirts in one scene.
All wearing yellow.
Technically, yes. The blue guy, Boktar, is getting really freaked out at all of this.
I'm with him.
And in response, Miles's plan is to separate again, seeing as it worked so well the last time.
Oh my god. Come on, Miles.
At least the blue guy pointed out that it's a bad idea, but he didn't do anything about it.
Oh, he offered to send Garak with him.
At this point, you see Garak is getting really twitchy. He's actually scratching his neck now. And he's looking very disturbed. I think it's the best way of describing it.
Sweaty.
Yeah. He tells Miles he has other plans. He doesn't intend to stand around waiting to get killed. He's going after the Cardassian soldiers and will neutralize them. There's a brief dispute with Amaro, who's the other security guy, who doesn't want to let Garak leave, but the chief tells him, let him go, and agrees with Garak's idea. Garak, who now we see really does look very sweaty, there is something very off with him, says to the chief, why don't you come with me? Kill a few Cardies, it'll be like old times.
You said that he agreed with him. Do you think he really agreed with Garak's plan, or did he just think, yeah, fine, just go and kill them. Just get away from me?
No, I think he genuinely agreed with Garak's plan.
Okay.
I think at this point, Miles looked at Garak as an asset in this situation. He knows what Garak's capable of. It probably would be the best idea to let Garak just go and do what he's good at.
He didn't exactly play it that way as the actor, but yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the actor looked more like he was just annoyed and just wanted Garak to shut up because he was constantly poking at him still.
Oh yeah, well he brought up Setlik 3 again at this point.
Yeah.
Garak is back in the infirmary and complaining that the computer keeps giving him access denied. And I think we're just going to have to call him Sweaty Garak from this point.
Yes.
He looks visibly irritated and sweaty, and he's itching a lot. There is something fundamentally wrong with Garak now.
Yeah.
Behind Garak, someone starts descending the stairs, and we see it's one of the Cardassian soldiers who stealthily creeps into the infirmary, but Garak is gone. He walks past the 3rd stasis tube, and when his back is turned, it opens, revealing Garak with a disruptor. Looking for me? Asks Garak, and then just shoots the guy. Garak fundamentally has to do his killing with a little bit of flair.
Yeah. But if he's really a great spy, he's going to shoot him and then say that.
Right. Don't talk, shoot.
Yeah. Then talk.
After he shoots him, Garak says, that felt good.
Oh, yeah. That's not good.
That's a very bad thing coming from Garak.
Yeah. Red alert.
Back with Miles and Nog asks why Garak keeps on bringing up Setlik 3. He asks, weren't you a hero? Miles tells Nog that he doesn't like thinking about what happened then, and sometimes soldiers have to kill. Garak then returns, bringing Miles the badge of one of the soldiers he just killed. He tells Miles he did a tissue sample and found massive doses of a psychotropic drug in the soldier's system. The drug amplifies his people's natural xenophobic tendencies.
A truer description of Cardassians has never been uttered. Xenophobic tendencies.
I was thinking to myself, do they actually need any more?
We hate everyone.
Yeah. Death to all.
A drug that makes you an even bigger racist. That's fantastic.
Garak thinks it was a high command plan to motivate the troops, and Miles asks if perhaps it's an experiment that went wrong.
This was awfully convenient that he did a tissue sample, that any equipment was actually even working. It would have made more sense, I feel like, if he had found some orders or some documents or something. Yeah. I thought he's like, I killed the guy, and then I decided while I'm in this rage that I'm having from the drug, I would stop searching for the other guy to do a tissue sample. I really did not buy that.
It was a little convenient, yes. Garak tells Miles he needs to get back to his task, and for the first time, Miles notices that something is wrong with Garak. He tells him, "You look different. That's not the face of a tailor." Mm-hmm. Garak, always ready with a quip, replies, "I'm not a tailor. Not for the moment, anyway." Both Nog and Miles look very concerned about this.
Yep.
I think you're very much seeing business Garak here.
Yep.
Boktar, the blue guy, is working in a hallway while Amaro stands guard. Garak is watching from the shadows and continues to look very sweaty. He sees the other Cardassian soldier, but when he goes after him, he's gone. Boktar asks Amaro to pass him a coil spanner, so instead of standing guard, he lowers his gun and starts digging in the toolbox.
Ugh. Fatal mistakes.
Soon as he does this, the other Cardassian appears, killing Boktar by standing on his neck, quite grisly,
yeah,
and pointing his disruptor rifle at Amaro, who is completely taken by surprise.
God, these guys are the F troop.
They really are, aren't they? You had one job to do.
One job. Hold your gun and protect this guy. Come on.
Yep. But Garak comes to the rescue by shooting the soldier in the back.
Yep.
Without a quip, I was very disappointed. He could have put a little humor into that.
He could have. He could have been like, "Hey, buddy, behind you."
Amaro tells Garak Boktar needed a coil spanner, and Garak replies the worst part of it is that isn't a coil spanner, and holding the tool Amaro just had, stabs him, saying, "It's a flux coupler." Mm-hmm. That tool actually looked more like a Klingon weapon than a tool.
Very dangerous.
Miles calls Boktar with no response, and then he and Nog go to find a dying Amaro who tells them that Garak stabbed him.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm actually surprised Miles didn't suggest he and Nog split up.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Nog, let's split up. That's the best idea. And then when you're dead, what will I do? There'll be no one left to split up with.
Yeah, exactly. Miles finally realizes that Garak must have been exposed to the drug.
Yeah.
And he should have spotted it earlier. Yes, he really should have.
Yes.
And also that he should have gone after the Cardassians soon as they attacked them. I would have said, ideally, before they attacked you.
Right.
Soon as you figured out that there was potentially Cardassians on the station.
Yes.
He tells Nog they're going after Garak, and a very shaky Nog asks, "To kill him?" And a very calm Miles quietly replies, "If that's what it takes to stop him, yes." We now see that Garak has completely lost it. He's in the station commander's office, looking for the pieces of a Kotra board, and he calls Miles, and while he's talking, Miles and Nog sneak up to the commander's office. Garak is almost babbling at this point, saying how alive he feels at this point, and he'd wager that Miles feels the same way too. Nog and Miles make it into the commander's office, but it's empty. Duh.
Yeah, duh is right.
The doors of the office suddenly close, and a force field locks Miles in. Garak quickly overpowers Nog and tells O'Brien, "It looks like I've captured your last piece. If you want it back, you're going to have to take it from me."
Poor Nog.
Yeah, he's not much of a threat to Garak.
Definitely not.
Miles now tries a very Starfleet thing and attempts to talk to Garak, telling him that it's the drug that's affecting him. I like that. I thought that was a really great little theme to insert. Miles doesn't want to go back to being a soldier. He at least wanted to try the classic Star Trek Federation Starfleet approach.
Right.
Let's see if I can talk my way out of this. Let's see if I can reason with Garak. So I thought that fitted really well at this point.
I agree. I did think that fit well and is the kind of thing that Starfleet would do.
Yeah.
And it's like Miles still trying to talk himself into, "I'm an engineer." How many times does he say it in this episode? "I'm an engineer, not a soldier." And then in the end, he has to revert a bit back to the soldier tendencies, which he's tried to deny.
Yeah, totally. Garak tells Miles he's having fun, and this is the most exciting game he's played in years.
That's never good.
He tells Miles, "You're a killer, admit it, we both are. Behind that Federation mask, you're a predator, just like me." And Miles replies, "No, I'm nothing like you." Finally, Miles says, "We'll meet, face to face, no weapons."
In a rainstorm.
That would have been very 90s.
Mm.
Garak then points his gun at Nog and tells him, "You have no idea how hard it is to keep me from pulling this trigger, but I need you alive." Miles makes his way to the promenade and sees that Garak has strung up the bodies of all the red shirts. He finds Garak holding a phaser rifle on Nog, and Garak tells Miles to put down his own weapon. This scene, I thought Garak looked so Golda Cat. I don't know if they changed his makeup or if they did something, but he had like the staring eyes and the whole look. That is Golda Cat.
Well, and they were sort of shooting him from below, so you're like looking up at him and his eyes were always really wide. So they were doing a lot of things to make him look different.
Yeah, it looked great. Garak tells Nog he's not going to shoot an unarmed man. What fun would that be?
Yeah, but he was about to shoot Nog, who was unarmed.
But he needed Nog. The thing here, Garak didn't want to just kill Miles. He wanted to prove himself against Miles.
Oh, definitely.
We already know that Garak has a lot of that Cardassian racial bigotry.
Right.
He wants to defeat Miles.
Or he just wants to prove the superiority of his race.
Oh, precisely. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
His xenophobic tendencies.
Yes. Natural xenophobic tendencies.
Yes.
Well, Miles puts the rifle down, and Garak asks if he has another weapon. Miles, of course, is packing a little bit of extra heat. He has a phaser behind his back and a tricorder. But I think we get a clue there's something more here, as he very carefully takes out the tricorder and places his phaser on top of it.
Right. The tricorders that weren't working a few minutes ago.
Garak puts his own weapon down, and the stunt doubles begin some hand-to-hand combat. Garak is basically beating the snot out of Miles.
Yes.
And after knocking him down, stands over Miles and says, "Maybe it's true. You're not a soldier anymore." Miles on the floor replies, "You're right. I'm an engineer." And he taps his comm badge. And the phaser, which appears to be just to the left of Garak, explodes, throwing him backwards onto some barrels. Miles would have been awfully close to that as well.
Well, he did crawl around the edge of the wall. He was kind of hiding.
Okay. Nog says he's okay, and Miles goes over to check on Garak, who is clearly quite injured, but definitely still alive. We go back to the station, and Julian is telling Miles that Garak will be okay. He's neutralized the psychotropic compound that was affecting his nervous system. Bashir says the drug brought out the worst parts in him and allowed those impulses to take over. He wasn't in control of his own actions.
A likely story for Star Trek.
He was being a more pure Cardassian.
Oh, Lord.
He allows Miles to talk to Garak, who is now looking a lot less sweaty, and Miles tells Garak that they managed to salvage the parts they needed, at the cost of only 4 crew. That's pretty good.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, because Garak's like, mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Garak then asks the chief to express his deepest regrets to Amaro's wife. Garak tells Miles if he'd been any closer to the phaser, it would have killed him. Miles replies, "Don't take it the wrong way, but that was my plan."
And Garak is like, I understand.
I love that. Miles then leaves sickbay, saying, "See you around." The end.
But don't worry, next week we'll be all back to normal.
Oh yeah, they'll be best friends again.
Well, okay. Do you have over-analysis of this dramatic episode?
Yes, I do.
Oh, naturally.
I think the first thing I will start with is I liked at the end how Miles and Garak both seemed to have this almost professional understanding that their goal was to kill the other one. And they sort of bizarrely accepted that fact.
I think Miles has a lot of experience with people being taken over by aliens. I mean, himself included, and not quite being themselves.
Yeah.
And once that happens, you have to find a way to get through it. So I almost feel like, oh yeah, this happened all the time on the Enterprise. It was that sort of reaction.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It just happened to his wife very recently.
Yeah. That's interesting that you look at it like that. I saw it as more of they were both sort of admitting that they were professionals at that type of business.
Well, I think there was that undercurrent, yeah.
I just like that little scene.
Yeah, it was a good scene.
Next thing. So they can't replicate Cardassian technology. The Beta Matrix Compositor. I would say this is a complete handwave, but I will wonder, and here's headcanon, maybe it's just that the design is quite complex and they don't have a way of replicating it easily. So they don't have a working plan or a schematic or something that they could just put into the replicators.
That would have been a way better answer.
And it's one of those things of, yeah, we could make something that looks like it, but we don't know what the material composition should be, how strong it should be. So you could end up making a part that could fail catastrophically or be worse. So it wasn't that they couldn't replicate it, is they didn't have a plan that they could use to build one and to build one to the correct specification.
Yeah, that was just another evidence of a hand wave.
Yeah.
But they had one on the station. It was broken.
Right.
So you'd think they could have then analyzed it so they would have known what it was made of.
Or how it was constructed.
So maybe they couldn't really use that excuse easily either.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Good points. It is kind of hand wavy, yeah.
Hand wave.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. Next thing. Garak's exposure to the drug. It was just lying there on a railing.
I did wonder if the two Cardassians had put that there on purpose.
Yeah.
To somehow affect the others. Though I'm not sure it makes sense. There's that one moment where Nog asks why, if, it's making them more racist against Cardassians, why they would attack Garak. And he was like, oh, good question. And so could that have been part of a plan?
Yeah.
Maybe it would have killed someone else, like if one of the humans or the blue guy had touched it.
Yeah.
But instead Garak touched it.
Well, that's why I was wondering if that was a nod to Mars's comment about maybe it was an experiment that went wrong.
That went wrong, yeah.
The reason why they evacuated the station and withdrew was because some of the Cardassians on board were going crazy, that they were attacking anyone.
Maybe.
Bashir talked about how it brought out the worst instincts in Garak.
Right.
Now, I'm wondering here, because he specifically was going after these soldiers, and he knew that they were soldiers of the First Order 3rd Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
The Obsidian Order has a real contempt for the Cardassian military. Was that another part of this? It was also amplifying his negative feelings about fellow Cardassians. Maybe this was why it failed, because it would bring out petty rivalries or jealousies or anything like that. So it wasn't just, I hate all other races. It is, I hate other Cardassians as well. So you ended up with soldiers who were ultimately uncontrollable.
That's a very good overanalysis. I hadn't thought about that at all. Yeah, it could be. But if it took Bashir 35 seconds to straighten out Garak, you'd think they could have fixed those two guys.
In defense of Bashir, he is something of a genius.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't have the resources.
They still may have just left them there on purpose, that if anybody got in there, they knew those guys would kill them off.
True.
But I don't know. If they really thought they were not under their control, why would they leave them there at all? Because it remains a risk.
Maybe it was a hurried withdrawal.
Like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah, and these were two guys that were just in the status chamber, and whoever was leaving just said it to, okay, anybody opens the station, open the chambers.
Okay.
And before we leave this, there's one other thing that I think might be even more disturbing. Again, Bashir points out it brings out his worst characteristics. Could it be that it doesn't really matter if they were Cardassians or not? Garak just likes killing things.
Yeah, I mean, it could definitely be that.
He did seem to very much enjoy it. He gives his little quip when he shoots people, and we've seen him doing that before.
Yeah, and this drug just heightened that a little bit more.
Exactly.
Like, ooh, this is fun.
Well, he says, that felt good.
Yeah, but he's kind of shocked that it felt good, too.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
Maybe he'd learned to tamp those feelings down.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they were back.
So he's feeling something he hasn't felt in a while.
Right.
I mean, he was very much an assassin in the Obsidian Order. Because that leads me into this. Next point.
Yeah.
I think it's emphasizing the difference between Mars and Garak. Mars is a soldier. He follows orders and does his duty. I think Garak, at heart, actually enjoys this. I think Garak is a sport killer.
Really? I don't know. I feel like with the Cardassians, it's always just about showing we're better.
Yeah.
So it could just be that, right? If the xenophobic tendencies are what are being amplified,
right?
Then, yeah, but then he wouldn't have felt good killing Cardassians. Although you made the point that the military versus the order, so there was still a superiority even there.
Yeah.
So if it's just heightening the xenophobic part of it, then it would make sense that it was just making him feel good to win. But it can't only heighten that, these drugs. Yeah, I get it.
which makes it a lot more negative for Garak because there's a fundamental flaw with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next thing, Garak's apology to Amara's wife.
Yeah.
Genuine, or is that something he just feels he needs to do because he's on a Federation-controlled station and there's going to be an inquiry?
I thought it was genuine because I always think the best in people, unless they're Gul Dukat.
Yes.
So I guess I thought it was genuine because he's learned that's what you have to do to survive on the station.
Yeah.
And to be part of this town, because it's sort of like a small town there.
Right.
Or this community, I guess, is the right word to use.
Yeah.
So I thought genuine. Why? What did you think?
I don't know. I'm wondering if it is genuine because part of my own headcanon is Garak was moving away from what he had been, which was this operative of the Obsidian Order. And if you like, he'd found some level of peace of not always having to look over his shoulder, not always being on the next mission to kill someone or do something.
Right.
And this brought it all back. And now that the drugs are out of his system and he's feeling something like normal, he's trying to get back to that place that he was.
Yep.
So I'm going with, yeah, I think it was genuine.
Okay.
But could be wrong.
No, we both voted genuine. It must be true.
And my final thing.
Yeah.
I remember thinking this was going to be an episode where we find out that Miles wasn't the hero of Setlik 3. That it was either propaganda or the truth was Miles was the only one who survived and got the credit. Or it wasn't a glorious battle and it was like, oh, we just turned off their life support until they died. That there wasn't anything, wonderful or glorious or heroic about the battle. It was all propaganda and legend, as it were. I was very pleased that they didn't follow those expectations. And you never find out. You don't know if Miles is really a hero or was just doing his duty.
Or what happened at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of like that because I thought they were going to follow that trope in a story. But they didn't. They turned it into something else.
Yeah, it was purely Miles just trying to put it behind him.
Yes.
And not focus on it or have that not be the thing that defines him.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in the end, Miles really was using his engineering to get them out of trouble.
Yep. But I wonder if they're also trying to tell us that Miles' denial and saying, I'm not a soldier, I'm an engineer, is the thing ultimately that caused this mission to go so badly.
Interesting.
Because if he had stopped denying it and gone into soldier mode as soon as his team was threatened, he may have saved them.
There are 2 left behind Cardassian soldiers who are supposed to keep anybody off the station. We need to go and deal with that. That's a really good take. I didn't think about that, but I think you're right. I think that is fundamentally what the story is. Miles got them killed because he wasn't prepared to remain a soldier when he needed to be.
Right.
Wow. That's some more guilt to pile on Miles.
Oh, poor Miles.
And with that wraps up my overanalysis. Over to you.
Well, I only have a couple of things. I really like when we have these sort of Trek stories where there's a little bit of horror mixed in.
Yes.
It's happened in every show. And one of the things that I have sort of been complaining about as we've been watching Strange New Worlds is now I feel like every episode of Strange New Worlds, it's something I've seen before.
Yeah.
And there was that episode, the 9th episode, I think it was called All Who Wander. And it was the one where they're all wandering around a dark ship that's slightly askew.
Yep.
And I'm like, I like it when Star Trek does that. But then here's an episode from almost 30 years ago where it's the same thing, which is why I'm at that point now where I feel like, okay, I've seen these types of episodes before. It's not that I don't like them. It's just that we've done it now in all the shows.
It feels like a repeat.
Yeah, it feels like a repeat. It happened in Discovery, and I didn't quite feel like I had seen it before, I guess because I hadn't just seen it. Whereas watching Deep Space Nine at the same time, I keep feeling like, oh, I just saw this. It just happened on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And now they're doing it here on Strange New Worlds. So again, just here's another episode where it makes Strange New Worlds feels like it's repeating itself.
Yeah.
Let's see. The other thing I already mentioned this earlier, was when the shuttle drifted away and blew up. That was my favorite moment of the whole episode. Because I was like, now we have something. Now we're trapped here. We can't get off. There's 2 guys trying to kill us. That was really a good moment.
Never bring a backup radio.
Yeah.
I hope these guys don't do any kind of wilderness camping, because they'd all be dead within a couple of days.
They were terrible. They were not prepared for what they were going into. And this mission was a complete disaster. We lost 4 crew members.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about it at the end at all. And of course, that's the thing that bothers me about the old Trek, is that we don't seem to care about the loss of life because of that red shirt thing that we have where, oh, well, it's what they signed up for. Then they're dead. We'll never talk about them again. We never talked about them before. We'll never talk about him again.
We lost 3 crew plus 1 Eddington clone. So they could always make another one, or Section 31 is going,
okay,
thank goodness.
Okay.
We've got 1 less Eddington to worry about.
I guess Miles says there's going to be an inquest, right?
Yeah.
But there's got to be somebody looking into Miles's behavior and whether or not he should be in command of anyone.
Right. That's true.
Because this was pretty bad, though I argue that Sisko made some pretty fatal mistakes back in that Starship Down episode as well. So it's not that the captains are infallible.
No.
But this mission was bad.
Yeah, it's hard to rate this mission as anything other than complete disaster.
Totally.
The other side of it as well is maybe Sisko should not have let them go when they knew there was a station that is likely to be booby-trapped. That's a Cardassian station. What if there'd been a Jem'Hadar ship just stationed there?
We just weren't careful enough, especially in the current climate of the Dominion everywhere. So it just seemed too risky. We weren't careful enough. We didn't brief each other about what the booby traps could have been. We didn't go into safety mode to try to protect the crew when something bad happened.
Nobody read the mission briefing.
Right. But even beyond that, that first mistake where he splits everybody up was like, no, who told you that's the way to do it? You don't start at the bottom of the list. You start at the top of the list so you can clip off from the bottom. I just thought that was really terrible planning.
Yeah. And the question I have is, how many people has Stoltzov accidentally shot?
She's just pointing her weapon at her teammates. Like, we don't do that. Don't do that. That's terrible.
Yeah, treat everything like it's loaded. Basic rule.
Ugh, the F troop. Though that's all that I have in overanalysis, so I'm just going to move to women in the future. Not a lot to say. I mean, there was one female character, and there was that stupid Amaro guy was telling a story about how shocked he was that she was good at security for a woman. That was annoying, but it was brief, and I sort of got over it. In fact, I didn't even write it down. But when I went through it the second time, I was like, why do we need this here? This is just dumb. But other than that, there's really nothing to say here in this episode about women in the future.
She was equally as bad as everyone else.
Apparently she was, yeah. And that's fine. I don't mind that because that's how it is. Some people are just not good at their jobs.
Some people just aren't good at security.
Yes.
And then they assign them to Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. Really enjoyed the episode. Even though I might give the impression I was complaining about it, I did enjoy this. I thought it was a good, solid episode. Yeah, there was some hand-waving, but it's Star Trek. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed the feel of it very much.
That's what we're here for, is to point out some of that silliness, but still enjoy Star Trek.
Oh, absolutely. And I loved Garak in this one. It really, I thought, exposed so many pieces of Garak. I think that Garak is such an interesting character, but he's also so broken. And there are aspects of him that are truly horrifying. I think he is a sport killer at the end of the day. If he enjoys his old job. Although it is nice at the end if I think there was something of a redemption. That's not the person he wants to be.
That's true, absolutely. Well, I actually thought this was an awesome episode.
Yeah.
Like I said, I like the little horror that they inject, but also the performances here were so good. Andrew Robinson as Garak, I mean, he's always good. He understands that character, even when the character is kind of in conflict with itself. Yeah. He just really plays it well. But in this particular episode, he had another opportunity to play a different version of him. And I thought he did just an excellent job. I was really impressed.
Agreed.
Also, even the 4 red shirts, I thought they were pretty good. They're not always good when they throw us these characters that are just there to be killed off. But even though they were the F troop, I thought the acting was pretty good. So it was pretty happy with the performances.
Oh, agreed. I thought you got to see something of the character of the red shirts.
Yes.
The 2 engineers seemed quite diligent, and I thought you got to see how cocky those security officers were. I would put it down to the biggest problem here was having security officers who got your people killed.
Yeah, well, agreed. And Miles splitting them up.
Yeah.
When he kept doing that, that was, like I said, the fatal mistake. And maybe the last thing for me to say that I really liked was I never knew what was going to happen. I didn't know that's what was coming. I knew Garak was going to have been infected with something as soon as he touched that goo, but I didn't see how it ended coming.
Yep.
Just really entertaining episode.
Yes, completely agree. I did enjoy this episode a lot too. I think it has good rewatchability.
Well, I think that wraps up Season 5, Episode 24. Come back next week for Episode 25 as we slide towards the end of Season 5 already.
What happened? We just started.
I don't know. I don't know. Time is soup and everything's going too fast.
Agreed.
Well, in the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at ReBingeIT. We're also on Instagram and YouTube at ReBingeIT. You can go to talkthroughmedia.com and leave feedback there for individual episodes, and you can also listen to all of the other podcasts in our network. And as a reminder, there is a Patreon for the Talk Through Media Network. It is called patreon.com/Star Trek TTM. And all of the proceeds from that Patreon go to supporting all of the podcasts on the network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.